is the radar chart. We're going to be given the definition of the radar chart, explaining when is the appropriate time to use the radar chart, how to use the radar chart, and giving an activity on the use of the radar chart and demonstrating its use for practical purposes. Radar chart is a graphical method of displaying data involving multiple variables. It gets its name because once it's completed, it actually looks like a radar, or sometimes known as a spider chart, because it looks like the web of a spider. But it's designed basically to be able to show comparisons of multivariates along different quantitative variables. So if you're doing a change process, each change would be the different multivariants, and then you would determine the outcomes of those changes by quantitative variables on how they are measured. The radar chart allows you to clearly display all the different changes that take place over a period of time. So, for example, if you are doing a improvement science on student success in relation to seating logistics in the classroom, each seating, you can set it up so that each seating change is a different change cycle, and then measure the different forms of learning outcomes or learning preferences as it relates to that. Then display that data on a radar chart. So, using a radar chart, it allows you to display in improvement science the different performance matrix of ongoing programs. So as you do changes throughout a program, you can track those cycles using a radar chart. You can compare those cycles from one cycle to the next cycle based on the change that is performed. The benefit of this is that you're able to show all these cycles at once instead of using multiple charts. So if we're taking the different changes in the classroom seating, we have 3 different changes. We can take those different changes that we make and put all those on one chart. And then we can also show how those changes affect 5 different criteria that we have chosen to measure those changes by. This makes it very easy for your audience to determine whether those changes are effective, what changes are more effective, and what improvements still needs to be made. So basically, to set a radar chart up, you would have to determine what criteria you want to measure. And a radar chart is really good about measuring multiple criteria, so you can use 3 or more variables that you want to measure, or 3 or more changes that you want to take place. Then you would establish the data points that you want to measure that criteria by. If you have multiple variables, then you would set data points between 1 and 5 or 1 and 10, and determine how you would judge those. So 1 being the least amount of change that took place, or least effective, and then 10 would be the most effective. You would then collect your data. You could use surveys or tests or whatever methods. Develop a spreadsheet to display that data, and then using that spreadsheet, especially in Excel, you can use that technology to actually build the radar chart. So you really don't have to build that radar chart or plot those things by hand. You can actually use Excel to plot those for you. And that's pretty much what I'm going to be showing you how to do on the next slide. So how do we put a radar chart to use? What we're going to be doing is using the same example that we've been talking about. Affecting the change of learning outcomes through seating arrangements in classrooms. So you would create a survey. In this case, I sent this survey out at the beginning of the fall semester, and you would take a look at different criteria that you're looking to create your radar chart with. One of the first things you want to do when creating this survey is to have some qualification questions in the beginning. This is so that you can eliminate any outliners that will distort your data and cause irregularities. After you've created the questions that you're going to judge your criteria by. Then you would look at the different criteria that you're going to be talking about. The first change is the traditional row seating. The second change would be the cluster seating format. And then the third change would be the circular seating format. And we're going to try to determine, by doing the different changes, what actually is the most effective based on this criteria: attention and level of focus, ability to engage in learning process, activity involvement, connection with class, feeling comfortable and participating, creation of collaborative environment. And these will be rated on a 1 to 5 scale. And you can increase this to a 1 to 10 scale, but I used a 1 to 5 scale here. So after you've sent your survey, you've collected your responses, you would then have these displayed in an Excel spreadsheet. So I used Excel to capture all my responses because Excel does a wonderful job of creating radar charts automatically. It's one of the features of Excel. So after I've looked at my data and examined all of the criteria and make sure that I don't have anything that's going to create any type of outliners, I would create a radar chart. To do that, I'll have to take my data and separate it into a simple format for Excel to read. And so I made this chart. This is the 90-day cycles across the top, and this is the criteria. And then using the data that I collected from the responses, I just averaged each one using simple mathematics. So this chart gives you the traditional seating on this criteria, the cluster seating averages on this criteria, and the circular seating averages on this criteria. Once in this chart, you would go up to Insert, and then you would go across to Charts, and the last one in that row is Radar Chart. And if you click on the radar chart, it gives you the different ways to conduct the radar chart. So I would go and select my data, go over to radar chart, and it will automatically produce the radar chart that I want. Now I've already done this here, and you can see that this is the radar chart created from this data. And so this goes through and gives you the differences based on each change cycle: traditional seating, cluster seating, circular seating, and the criteria that I'm judging those changes on. So I want to take a look at attention, engagement, involvement, participation, and collaboration. Based on the survey, this is the results, and so you can actually see which one has the highest level based on the different criteria. And so here we can see this one is clearly collaborative. Traditional seating does not do very well on collaborative. Engagement is a little low there. It's higher on attention. And then cluster, of course, is spread a little differently. It's lower on attention, but very high on collaborative and involvement. And in circular seating, kind of is a large, even on the outside. So this one here gives better results from everything from attention, engagement, involvement, participation, and collaboration. So if I was using this to determine which style seating produces the most beneficial results based on this criteria, I can easily see that circular seating would be the one that I would want to stick with to produce the results that I'm looking for. So that is how you would use your radar chart to display the data of different change cycles over the course of a period of time. So if you have your 90-day cycle, so each 90 days you would change, and then you would collect the data based on your criteria, and then you can easily display that to your audience, showing the changes from one change cycle to another change cycle. Thank you. So in conclusion, you can see that the radar chart is a very good visual effect for showing results of change cycles, multiple change cycles all at once. You can capture the information, display it. You can see where needs for improvement are, when improvement occurs, what that improvement, what areas of improvement based on your variables that you're rating it by. The data that you collect can be displayed to your audience all at once. The problem with the radar chart is that it does not compare more than 3 groups in one radar chart, because then it begins to become clustered and it's ineffective. You don't want to try to attempt to do more than 10 factors on one radar chart, because then it also, the criteria gets blurred and it makes it less likely to be understood. Any more groups or factors on one chart becomes difficult to interpret for your audience. And whenever doing any type of chart, you want to make sure that it's easy to understand and it actually expresses the data and information that you want to portray. And a lot of times, simpler is always better. So that's the radar chart as used in improvement science. It's quite often used in other areas as well because of the features that it possesses. I hope you found this beneficial in your understanding of the radar chart and its use for improvement science.